Hi everybody. Today we're gonna have the last lecture in this course. This is gonna be the last pre-recorded lecture on the topic of the reproductive system. But before I'm gonna go to the reproductive system, I want to mention about the course evaluation. Everybody should have received the email from the CSI emails about the course evaluation. It starts in November 23rd, and it's gonna end on December 9 by the midnight. So please, those who didn't do the course evaluation, please do. So this is a link. This is a link you can access in the course evaluation. You have to use your CSI email username and a password for the computer login, campus login. So this is actually the same for the library access. If you have any difficult problems to log in, please email to the help desk. Make sure you know your Apple ID. So there is the main, and also you can if you have a problem to log in to the course evaluation, you also can find the access for the Blackboard page. It's in the first row. Like when you log in the Blackboard, it's going to be in the first row. You can find the course evaluation link. So you also can find the link there in the Blackboard page. The reason it is important to do the course evaluation, because it's going to help teachers to improve their classes. So if you please do course evaluation for a lecture class and a lab class and any class you're taking, especially because now we transit to the online teaching, and I know it's not ideal. Sometimes it's very confusing, but the more students gonna do the course evaluation, the more you're gonna give you response, the better in the future courses gonna be set up, and hopefully they're gonna be improved by teachers. So the reproductive system. So reproductive system happens between two separate sexes, female and male. Sometimes we have an exception. We have some species in the animal kingdom, which is hermaphrodites, which can produce both gametes, male gametes and female gametes. So the gametes are cells which are responsible for making the embryo. In the humans, it is sperm, which has come from the male, and eggs, which has come from the female. So we call them eggs. So we call them gametes. So some animals can actually make both gametes, females and male gametes, and can reproduce without anybody else, just alone. And we have many examples in the animal kingdom. So basically, what happened? You have so we have gonads, and they produce gametes. So gametes is a sperm and eggs. So in a male organism, right now we're gonna concentrate in the human anatomy. So the human have testes, and those testes produce sperm. So we have two testes, and females have two ovaries, and they produce eggs. So the sperm and eggs, the sperm is gonna go inside the egg. It's gonna initiate the growth of the egg. So the sperm have a half a genetic code from the male, and the egg from the female have the second half of a genetic code, right? So we have each human cells have 46 chromosomes. So a half 23 chromosomes come from the male, and the other 23 chromosomes comes from the female. So both of them 23, each one of them is 23 chromosomes, and both they're gonna make 46 chromosomes, and they're gonna make a functional cell. So if you have a cells which have a 46 chromosomes, it's a functional cells, and that cells is gonna multiply. It's gonna become an embryo. So let's start with the male reproduction system because it's a little bit easier than a female's. Female's reproductive system is a little bit more complex. So this is a picture of a testis. So the biggest difference between female reproductive system in male reproductive system, males can produce huge number of spermatozoids or sperm. So the sperm produce so the testes have a network of tubulus where the sperm actually is produced. So in each tube, the outer layer of our cells are they all the time is multiplying, and they're responsible for producing the sperms. So the first layer is for example, this cells is gonna divide by two cells. So one is gonna divide, so you're gonna have the first cell and the second cell. So the second cell is gonna mature to the spermatozoid. So as you can see separate tails of a sperm. And so when the cells is divided by two, the second cell is going to mature and become a sperm. And the first cell is going to go for the second round of division, then for third one, for fourth, and then it's for infinity times, as long as a male organism is healthy. Those cells is gonna divide unlimited number of times. So what's gonna happen then? Those and as you can see, those tubulus they have a hollow inside. So the hollow tubulus, those mature spermatozoids gonna kind of flash and drop those tubulus, and they're gonna concentrate and store inside the epididymis. So this is a structure in the surface of a testis, and from that epididymis, if they're gonna store for a certain amount of time, and if they need it, they're gonna also transfer to the next tubulus, which is become a little bit bigger. Vas deferens, and the sperms is going to travel further. So this is a male reproduction system. So this is each. So we have two testes. When the sperm is gonna develop, and it's gonna start in the epididymis, then it's gonna travel for the vas deferens. Next to the, so this is a urinary bladder. So it's gonna go next to the urinary bladder. We have a special set of a glands, which is gonna provide the additional nutrition for the sperm, and then it's gonna travel to the penis urethra, and it's gonna go outside. So the that's the difference between female reproductive system and male reproductive system. We share the males, they share the urethra with a urinary system, right? So through the urinary system, the urine is gonna come out from the urinary bladder, and also the sperm is gonna also come out from the testes, and it's gonna use exactly the same urethra pathway to go out from the penis. In a female, we have two different systems. So females have urethra completely different and from the reproductive system. So some organs you have to know. So epidermis and a vas deferens. So they store the sperm. Then we have ejaculatory duct. So it's right here. So this is a duct from where the sperm is going to be released. And the urethra with the penis expel the sperm to the outside. So let me talk about those glands we have. So the first gland is a seminal vesicle. So it's going to release the different nutritions for the sperm. Then we have prostate gland, which is extremely important gland, and and it's a second. I think it's a second lead cancer problem in a males. So approximately 25,000-30,000 males is gonna die from the prostate cancer. So what is the prostate gland is gonna do? It's gonna release the alkaline fluid, and the second one is bulbourethral gland, which is gonna produce the lubricant for the sperm. So all three of those. So when we release, so you have to remember those cells. When we release the sperms, they actually the cells, alive cells, and they have to go through the urethra and go inside through the vagina, through the uterus, and try to get to the egg. And so this is a long journey. This is long journey and long trip for the sperm, for the single sperm. So for sperm to be able to go that long trip through the female reproductive system, you have to have an additional components to this. If it will be just a single cells, they wouldn't be able to do. So the nutritions provide the energy for the sperm so it can travel that distance. And then we have so the prostate gland is very important, which is going to produce the alkaline fluid or base fluid, right? Because first of all, the urine we have in urine and bladder have acid pH. So if you have an acid pH and you're gonna have your sperm going out through the same urethra, this pH is gonna the acid pH is gonna affect the function of a spermatozoids. So when the prostate gland is released, the alkaline fluid is going to neutralize the acid pH in urethra, and also it's going to neutralize the acid pH in a uterus. So female uterus have a pH approximately of pH of 4.5 to 5. And the reason why the uterus is slightly acid is to decrease the level of infections, or it could be UTI infections, which can go to the reproductive, can follow to the uterus, and just suppress. So if you have an acid pH, so the acidic pH is not gonna be favorable. It's not going to be favorable environment for different organisms to grow. So that's why uterus is having an acid pH. to suppress the growth of fungi and different bacteria. So this is why the prostate gland has to have a base pH to neutralize that acid pH in the uterus, so the sperm having a nice pH of 7 will be able to survive and that in this environment. And also we have a lubricating fluid which is going to help to swim, is going to help swim sperm next to the egg. So let's talk about the anatomy of female reproductive system. So as you can see, the urethra and a vagina have a different openings in a woman, so they don't have the same. It's no connection between urethra and vagina in a female reproductive system, but in a male, we know the urethra share the same pathway for release of a sperm. So then you have the uterus where the embryo is going to develop if the egg is going to be meet with a sperm, and also you have a bladder. So the question is, why the pregnant woman have to go pee more frequently when they get pregnant? The reason why, because when the baby is gonna grow in the uterus is gonna push down on the bladder, so the bladder is not gonna be able to hold the same amount of urine as if the woman weren't pregnant. So this is actually why. So when the woman is pregnant, the uterus is gonna actually push down on the bladder, and the woman have to go to the bathroom sometimes 10 times in a day, because the bladder cannot hold the same amount of urine no more. So then we have a fallopian tubes, which is grow from the uterus, and we have an ovary. So the woman have 2 ovaries and 2 fallopian tubes, and all right. So so the opening, so urethra has the same opening with a vagina. So this is in the same spot. All right. So this is a different perspective of the female reproductive system. So now we're going to talk more about the ovaries and how the eggs are developed. So this is a fallopian tube, oviduct. So this is ovary. We have 2 ovaries. The woman have 2 ovaries, and you have a different ligaments, and which is gonna help to tie this all together. So uterus cavity. So inside the uterus cavity, we have very special endometrium layer. So this is endometrium layer, which is actually extremely important during development the embryo, or when the egg gets fertilized. If the endometrium is not going to be developed right, the embryo is not going to be able to develop further. So I'm going to talk later about this and the endometrium layer, but just remember for now, this is extremely important piece of tissue inside the uterus. So we have a cervix, and then we have a vagina. So I'm gonna explain later how the spermatozoids follow the journey through the reproductive system, female reproductive system. So first, let me talk about the ovary and production and the development of the egg. So what's the difference? What's the difference between woman, female, and male reproductive system? Is an amount of gametes they can produce. So in each, so the male organism is able to produce billions and billions, literal billions of spermatozoids. So the number is pretty much unlimited. But females are set up with a limited number of eggs per life. So so they have so the female so we have primary follicles, and the females have females have limited um, limited number of those primary follicles. I think per life women have approximately like 1,000 or maybe like a couple thousand of those follicles. So now you can compare the number of size of how many gametes can produce a female and male. So the female has only approximately can produce approximately 1,000 gametes per life, and a male can produce approximately, I don't know, 100 billions of spermatozoids. So and the difference between and the difference comes, so the male organism is producing them all the time, and so this is why actually women have a menopause, and they're not going to be able to have a they're not going to have able to have a kids, because they don't have eggs. So they run out from the eggs, and this menopause can come at some women early at age, approximately 40, 45. At some women are going to come later, about the age of 55. So the 45, 55 is at the time most of the women have gonna go to the menopause. I think with the recent decades, maybe the last 4 decades, the menopause, the time of menopause, have prolonged. So now the women have extended the menopause. The reason why, because a better health system, we can prevent a lot of diseases, and the women can have kids at later time. And also, so those amount of cells, so when the female, so when those cells are developed on the first time, so the primary follicles are developed, no, the progenies of primary follicles, right? So we have the other cells which produce primary follicles. So those initial cells, 1,000 or couple thousand of cells, have developed during the development of the female. So when the female was inside the uterus, right? So when it was only the couple of months, let's say like I don't know exactly the age, but I think it's around like 5 to 6 months, or maybe 4. I think like 4 to 6 months, when the female embryo is 5 to 6 months, right? 4 to 6 months. When the female embryo is 4 to 6 months, those cells, so the gametes is already produced in ovaries, right? So and those 1,000 cells is going to be or like a couple thousand of cells is going to be with woman for life. So she's not going to be able to produce more cells or less cells. She always going to use those cells which is when it's those cells which were produced during the embryo stage. This is why if the woman have a very unhealthy lifestyle, if she drinking, smoking, those cells is going to be affected, because she doesn't have any different other cells. She's not going to produce new cells, and she has only set she only has the one set of a cells which is going to be for her for life. This is why if the woman have a healthy lifestyle, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, those cells is going might get affected. So if those cells is going to get affected, those couple thousand going to get affected, they might produce mutations. Or if she just live in a very unhealthy environment, if the diet is very poor, so those uh, cells can mutate, and those mutation can cause different genetic disease um, like autism, um, and so on, right? So this is extremely, or sometimes it might be mutation which are not gonna. Sometimes those mutations um, is going to be fatal for the embryo, right? So this is extremely important. So this is actually why the younger the woman, so the if the woman is going to have the kids the earlier age, this is a very high probability, probability the embryo is going to develop in the right way, and is not going to have any different pathologies. And if the woman is tend to have and the kids, let's say like after 30s and maybe like in a 35 40 years, the probability is increased dramatically. So the woman, because mutations is gonna occur on those cells, because we're always exposed to different toxins, alcohol, smoking, drugs, um, or sometimes you even can take some medications, and those medications might affect those cells. And late, if the woman tend to have a kids at the later of life, it's a high, the probability is increased the embryo might have some genetic defects, or maybe even fatal, and it's not going to be able to live. So what's going to happen, you have those a couple thousand cells, and every month it's going to be released about 5 to 6 primary follicles, right? So we have couple thousands, and they're gonna release 5 to 6 primary follicles. So every month the woman, when she starts to have a period, she's gonna lose 5 to 6 follicles, or eggs, right? And from those 5 to 6 eggs, only one is gonna develop. Only one is, so all of them is gonna die, and only one is gonna develop, and that one is just survive. Now it's called the secondary follicle. Then it's gonna develop later, and it's gonna grow, and it has an protective tissue, and this is a protective tissue is gonna make sure that the cell is gonna stay vital, and it's gonna make sure the environment is right. It's gonna make sure the right nutritions, and blood flow is efficient to the oocyte. So now this is a secondary oocyte of or actually the egg, which is going to be responsible for making the embryo. So then it's going to grow even bigger, but as you can see, the size of an egg didn't change. Only the graphene tissue, right? This is graphene tissue is going to increase in size, but not the cell. So in the age of 14, so this is taking up 2 weeks. So this generally this uh, incubation time, I will say this incubation time is gonna take about 2 weeks or 14 days. At some on some women it might take 12 days, and some women might take a little bit longer, 16 days, but on average it's a 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks. And then ovulation is gonna happen. So what's gonna happen? The egg is gonna develop, and it's gonna mature, and it's gonna leave from the ovaries. When the cells is going to release from the ovaries, it means ovulation. So right now the oocyte is ready to be fertilized by the sperm. So from that period, so when the woman have end of a period, and after 2 weeks, she has an ovulation. Now um, she can get pregnant. Basically, she can get pregnant because oocyte is can released, and that oocyte is can be fertilized by the sperm. And the second structure is developed later, the corpus luteum, and it's responsible for production of hormones such as estrogen and proestrogen. And I'm going to talk the difference and how they affect the pregnancy and the periods. So when the ovulation happens, oocyte is released and is now ready to be fertilized by the sperm. So we have oviducts. So the things to remember, right? Oviducts is fallopian tube store the egg, which has already been ovulated. So now it's in a fallopian tube. So fertilizations happen in a fallopian tube. Sometimes in an abnormal pregnancy, the embryo can start to develop in fallopian tube, and most of the time these pregnancies have to be terminated because the embryo just cannot be able to survive in fallopian tube. But sometimes it happens. Embryos start to develop in fallopian tube. This is a pathology. So, but that because it doesn't have a supportive tissue in fallopian tube. This is why most of the time the embryo is not going to be able to develop there. But in the uterus we have a special tissue, which is going to talk later, which is going to help to develop the embryo. So in the uterus the development is happen, and the vagina is served as a birth canal for that embryo. So what do we have? We have only one mag per month of 28 days. So the period time from when the egg is, so the time of a period is 28 days. So, and from the day in this period, the woman have only one egg per month to survive, but actually she used up like approximately 6 cells. But from those 6 cells, only one egg survive. So if you have a couple thousand of cells, you can count how many cells, how many months you have left. So for example, you have just, let's say you have 1,000 cells, and you have every month 6 to 7 cells used up, and only one cell is gonna survive. So you can calculate how many basically how many months you have left to be pregnant, to be able to pregnant. But the millions of sperm per ejaculations. So the studies found it's approximately 500 millions of sperms released per ejaculation. So this is extremely huge number. But only one sperm can fertilize the egg, right? So only one sperm can fertilize the egg. The male system release a huge amount of the egg of the sperm, but only one can fertilize the egg. So what's gonna happen when the sperm is gonna introduce to the vagina? The sperm is they're gonna follow through the uterus to the fallopian tube, and if they're gonna meet the egg, they're gonna fertilize. If it's no egg, nothing gonna happens. Those sperms is just gonna be dissolved by the uterus. But if the egg, if evaluation happens, and we have an egg in the fallopian tube, it's gonna meet with the sperm is going to be fertilized. So the cool fact is the sperm actually can survive inside the uterus for approximately 2 to 5 days. So this is extremely important factor. This is sometimes when females and males have sex, and they have unprotected sex, and the woman knows she haven't evaluated yet, and they have unprotected sex, and then she realized they got pregnant. So the reason why she got pregnant, because sometimes those spermatozoids can survive for a couple of days. So this is actually so those couples um, who trying to have a sex, and most of the girls aware of their periods, and when ovulation happens, and they trying to have sex before the ovulation happens. But if the um, sex happen before just couple days before the ovulation happens, and the sperm is going to be able to survive, because it's vital. If you remember, it's when the sperm is ejected, it has nutrition, so it's going to be able to survive for a couple of days. And if the ovulation is going to happen, and the sperm is already going to be there for a couple of days, it's going to be ready to fertilize the egg, and the woman is going to get pregnant. So the protection is very important for if you don't want to have if you don't have surprise or unwanted pregnancy. So what's gonna happen? So you have a sperm, and it's gonna fertilize. Only one sperm is gonna fertilize the egg. So it's gonna go basic. So and the egg has a nucleus. So this is a 23 chromosomes, and there 23 chromosomes. So they're gonna go. So those 23 chromosomes from the dad gonna go inside the female nucleus, which is also have 23 chromosomes. They're um, gonna fuse in a one nucleus. So now we're gonna have 46 chromosomes, and the cells is gonna be able to divide. So the first steps, the fertilized egg is gonna divide by 2. So we have 2 cells, and then it's gonna be 4 cells, and those. So this is already viable embryo. So this is how everybody starts our life, from the half. So one cell from the dad, the other cell from mom. Each one have a genetic material. They're gonna fuse. They're gonna make one set of material. Now it's gonna be just a single material, genetic material. Half from the dad and half from the mom. 46 chromosomes. So now this is you. When it happens, this is already you at a singular level. So everybody starts our life at a singular level. So then the cells is going to divide by 2, by 4, by 8, by 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, and so on. And those egg is going to go inside the uterus, and is going to attach, those cells is going to attach to the wall of a uterus. And then so this wall, the name of these walls is endometrium, and it is extremely important tissue, which is gonna support the development of the embryo. So let me talk about the period, because this is like very interesting and an extremely important topic to know. So each woman have a each woman have a cycle, a period, and it's also important for the boys and guys who start to have an sex life, because most of the people do not aware from of this. So the cycle has 28 days. Most in average, some girls have 26, 27, 30 days. Sometimes it's delayed. Sometimes it's begin early, and the reason why, because first of all, the cycle is controlled by hormones, the estrogen and the prostogen, and those hormones um, can change um, if you're in a stress, uh, if you've been really hungry, like let's say for a week, you might not have a cycle at all, and different toxins, medication, everything might affect the level of those hormones, and those hormones is gonna actually determine the cycle. But most of the women have a cycle of 28 days, and that's a cool fact. For some unknown reason, uh, if you have more than one woman living in a house, it seems to be their cycles for some reason seems to be synchronized. Uh, Nobody knows why that happened. If you have, or let's say you have a sister, right, younger sister and older sister, with the time, it's a high probability their cycles is gonna get synchronized, and they're gonna be have at very similar time. Have no idea why that happened. So this is an example of a growth of endometrial endometrial tissue, which is the outer layer of a uterus, right here, where the development of a attached or fertilized eggs is going to happen, and where the development of an egg is going to begin. So if you don't have this layer, the cells is not going to be able to attach uh, to the uterus. So let's first of all let's begin. So, and we also have the other two hormones, which is gonna uh, so estrogen and prostogen is gonna maintain the growth of the endometrial, and then in a pituitary gland, which is located in your brain, this is hypothalamus, and it's gonna release two hormones, LH and FSH, which is gonna be responsible for the uh, for the development of an evaluation of an egg. So when the menstruation cycle is gonna end, and it's usually gonna take approximately um, 4 to 5 days, most of the time. So in the first 2 days, you have the highest release of a blood, and and um, destroyed destroyed and dissolved endothelium tissue. And when when happened that when the menstruation cycle is begin, you have uh, initiation phase, which is gonna initiate the development of a primary follicles. So the primary follicles is gonna develop when the menstruation cycle is gonna start, and those follicles is gonna grow. So the FSH hormone is gonna increase, and the maturation at the end of a menstruation cycle is gonna end. So when the period is end, FSH hormone is gonna jump a little bit, and the maturation of a follicle is gonna begin. And the maturation is gonna take approximately a week, so it's 7 days, right? So the period of a primary from the primary follicles to the secondary follicles is taking 7 days. So this is a period, and then from the secondary follicle to the evaluation to the mature oocyte is gonna take the other 7 days. In total, is gonna take 2 weeks, and the evaluation is gonna be promoted by release of LH and FSH hormones from the pituitary gland. So when the ovulation happens, the level of hormones of those hormones is going to get decreased, and then corpus luteum, and this structure is going to be responsible for producing estrogen and prostogen. So in the day, so when approximately in a day 10, so when the maturation, of follicle is going to happen, maturation of follicles happen, the estrogen is going to increase, and endometrial tissue is going to start to grow. So the tissue in a uterus, is going to start to grow, and then the prostrogen is going to concentration of prostrogen, progesterone is going to increase. So in the day 4, when the ovulation happens, you have already good layer of endometrial tissue. So on the day 4, the woman can get pregnant. So what's gonna happen? All right. So let's concentrate on the day 14. So ovulation happened. You have increase in the estrogen, which is gonna, so from day 7 to day 14, so this is a proliferated phase when the yeast layer is gonna grow, and now it's ready to take the fertilized egg and develop and support the development of an embryo. So what happened in the day 14? You have ovulation. So, and that ovulated egg is gonna meet the sperm, which is gonna introduce by male. And if at that point the sperm was there, so right now from day 14 to day 21, the egg is going to be able to survive. The egg is going to actually be able somewhere in a fallopian tube, right? The egg is going to be viable for 7 days. So actually woman can get pregnant only for that period of time, in approximately in a period of 7 to 6 days. So let's say if the woman gonna have unprotected sex in that period of time, it's a low probability she's gonna get pregnant. And also, if after the day like 20, 21, 24, if she's gonna have sex, it's also a very low probability she's gonna get pregnant. So usually women have so when the ovulation happens, in that period of time, the woman is going to be able to get pregnant. Why and why is that? So this is 2 reasons. First of all, when the estrogen, that so that when we have ovulation happen, the estrogen level, the progesterone level is going to increase dramatically, and it's going to be in a peak of a day 21, and then it's going to drop dramatically. And so what's going to happen? So when the prostogen is going to drop, it's going to initiate the menstruation cycle. So if the prostrogen is going to drop drastically, this endometrial tissue is going to now degrade. It's going to degrade, and the reason why the women actually have so much blood, sometimes it's like it could be like 20 to 80 milliliters for the period, because it has a lot of vasculature. And the reason why, because if the egg is gonna attach to the cell, have to be able to get a lot of nutrition, because the cells is going to divide very rapidly, and it's going to go and it's going to go and it's going to grow very, very rapidly. So, and to be able to grow, you have to have a lot of oxygen. First of all, you have to have a lot of oxygen and nutrition, and to be able to provide these, the tissue have to be highly vasculature. The vasculature have to be developed. Uh, uh, so these tissues have to be develop vasculature to be able to provide nutrition in oxygen for development embryo. But when the progesterone is going to drop, the destruction of this tissue is going to initiate, and it's going to go to the menstruation cycle. But if, for example, if the woman got pregnant, for example, in a day 16, around here, so the progesterone level is not gonna get dropped. So it's gonna send the signal. It's gonna send the signal, and the progesterone level is gonna keep growing and growing and growing and be at the same level. So if the prostrogen level is not gonna get decreased, those supportive tissue is not gonna get destroyed, and it's going to initiate the pregnancy, and it's going to initiate the development of an embryo. But if for some reasons, if the woman got pregnant, and if she's going to take the pills which is going to change prostrogen level, for example, the woman got pregnant on day 14, right, and the egg already is transferred to the and attached to the endometrium cell in the uterus, and if the woman have a very high stress, or something happened with the hormones, or if she took some drugs which is actually decreased the progesterone level, it's going to initiate those menstruation cycle, and the pregnancy is going to be terminated. So this is actually how some birth controls pills works. If the woman got pregnant, they're gonna just mess up with your hormone levels, and it's gonna just initiate the new cycle, and that protective layer is gonna be just flashed out from your uterus with already start to develop an embryo. All right, so this is pretty much it for the reproductive system. So let me talk about the final exam. So the final exam is gonna take next week. For the Monday class, it's gonna be on Monday. For the Tuesday class, it's gonna be on a Tuesday. It's gonna be very similar. It's gonna be very similar to the midterm. The format is gonna be very similar to the midterm. It's gonna be similar format. Half of a questions is gonna come from the midterm. Some questions are gonna change from the negative to the positive, or from the positive to the negative. I'm probably gonna make some new questions, and that's a half of the final is gonna concentrate on the anatomy of a human. So what should you know for the second half of the final? So be able to recognize. So come back to that lecture, which is lecture 8 for animal organization, and be able to differentiate between tissues, like between muscle tissue, between adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is a fat tissue. Between connective tissue, bones, epithelial. So make sure you can say, you're gonna have a slide, like a picture from the website, for example, adipose tissue, and you have to be able to recognize this. or it's going to be just a type of a muscle. So be able to know the difference between muscle, tissue, epithelial tissue like simple squamous, which you can find in a lungs, structure of neurons, be able to know the difference. Then we have a cardiovascular system. This is definitely going to be in a final. I'm definitely going to ask question about blood flow. Make sure you know the anatomy of a heart, the the ventricles, the atriums, valves, know the blood flow, the name of the biggest arteries and veins. Urinary system, know the urinary system, um, anatomy of a kidney, unit of a kidney, which is nephron, structure, what kind of molecules is filtrated and not filtrated in the blood. So the nervous system know the major parts of a brain and their function. For example, different type of lobes, frontal lobe, um, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, their function, what they do. Alright, from the sense of organs, know the anatomy of an eye. I'm gonna mostly concentrate on anatomy of the eye, but I'm also gonna ask question about the ear. And the reproductive system, know the major parts of a female and male reproductive system, testes, ovaries. I know how the ovulation happened in the female, know something about the cycle. Oh, and also I forgot to mention about the cycle. It also have 28 days, and the reason why it has 28 days, a lot of scientists think it's synchronized with the lunar cycle, because the lunar cycle the lunar phase has 28 days, and it was a lot of people think the reason why the period cycle is 28 days is got synchronized with the time with the lunar cycle. I don't know how this is accurate, but this is just in a theory. All right, so the final exam is going to be approximately 50 questions. Some is going to be false or true questions, so multiple choice, multiple answer. I'm going to use images for questions, so be prepared for this. For the first half, make sure you go for the midterm and study the questions from the midterm. I'm gonna recycle a lot of questions. Some questions I'm gonna use exactly the same, so you better learn them. Some questions I'm gonna change slightly from negative to positive. Change maybe answer choice. Maybe I'm gonna paraphrase the questions, but the idea is gonna be the same. Also I'm gonna use some questions from the quizzes from the second portion of a class in anatomy. So make sure you know all the questions from the quizzes, because those questions is gonna come up on the final. And I wish you good luck on the final. Thank you very much.